This tiny island nation in the Pacific Ocean has now been shaken by a major earthquake 3 times in less than 2 years. And the one that just happened, a magnitude 6.1, hit on the exact same day that Indonesia was being torn apart by a 7.7 that killed dozens of people. But here is what illed 14 people, injured 265, and left 80,000 people affected. That was less than 2 years ago, and now the Earth is shaking again. Today, right now. So stay with me, because this story is not what it looks like on the surface. Welcome back. If you're new here, this is the channel where we don't just read you the numbers off a USGS alert. We tell you what those numbers mean. We tell you what is happening beneath the earthquake you're looking at on screen. Magnitude 6.1. Location: 56 km north-northeast of Port Olry, Vanuatu. Time: 8:20 a.m. on August 16th, 2026. Depth: 188.1 km. Coordinates: 14,547 degrees south, 166.193 degrees east. USGS pager, alert level, green. Shake map intensity level, 4. Wi-Fi. Did you feel it? Level 3. Now, the green pager alert tells you this earthquake is not expected to cause significant casualties or major economic losses. And the depth, 188.1 kilometers, tells you exactly why. This ISA deep focus earthquake. The energy originated nearly 190 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. By the time those seismic waves traveled through almost 200 kilometers of rock and reached the surface, they had spread out, weakened, and lost the concentrated destructive power they would have had if this rupture had happened near the surface. But here is what this earthquake is. It is a message. It is a signal from the ground beneath Vanuatu. And if you understand what that signal means in context, it will absolutely stop you in your tracks. Let me start with where Port Olry is. Port Olry is a small coastal town on the northeastern coast of Espiritu Santo Island, the largest island in Vanuatu. This is not a major urban center. This is a quiet, remote part of a small Pacific island nation. The nearest significant city is Lu, Granville, the second largest city in Vanuatu, with a population of about 13,000 people. The capital, Port Vila, is hundreds of kilometers to the south. And yet this area near Port Olry sits directly on one of the most seismically punishing sections of the entire Pacific Ring of Fire, 90 to 100 millimeters per year. Let me put that in perspective. The famous San Andreas Fault in California, one of the most talked about fault systems in the world, moves at approximately 33 to 37 millimeters per year. Vanuatu's subduction zone moves at nearly 3 times that rate. 3 times the speed of the San Andreas. And it has been moving at this rate for millions of years. All of that accumulated energy, all of that stress, all of that geological violence has to go somewhere. And it goes into earthquakes. Constant, relentless, never-ending earthquakes. The New Hebrides Trench lies approximately 100 to 200 kilometers to the west of the main island chain, and the subducting Australian plate descends steeply to depths of over 600 kilometers beneath Vanuatu. 600 kilometers. The slab of ocean floor diving beneath Vanuatu goes down over 600 kilometers into the mantle. It is one of the deepest subducting slabs on Earth. And as it descends, it generates earthquakes at every depth, from the surface all the way down to the deep mantle, shallow earthquakes that destroy buildings, intermediate depth earthquakes that shake vast regions, deep focus earthquakes that travel enormous distances before reaching the surface. But this same subduction zone produces shallow earthquakes too, frequently, and when it does, the results have been catastrophic. Multiple magnitude 7 or greater events struck in 2009, 2011, 2013, 2016, and subsequent years, reflecting the nearly annual occurrence of major earthquakes somewhere along the New Hebrides arc. Nearly annual. A magnitude 7 or greater nearly every single year. That is not a description of an unusual seismic zone. That is a description of one of the most consistently violent tectonic environments on the surface of this planet. And the area near Port Olry specifically has its own deep and sobering seismic history. On December 29th, 1973, an earthquake of magnitude 7.5 struck at a depth of 26 kilometers, approximately 81 kilometers northwest of Port Olry. Then on January 10th, 1974, a magnitude 7.2 struck at a depth of 34 kilometers, with its focus approximately 70 kilometers north-northwest of Port Olry. 2 magnitude 7 plus earthquakes in the same general area within 2 weeks of each other in 1973 and 1974. That is the seismic legacy of this part of Vanuatu. That is the geological track record of the ground that shook again today. The area where this quake occurred has a very high level of seismic activity. It has had at least 14 quakes above magnitude 7 since 1900, which suggests that larger earthquakes of this size occur infrequently, probably on average approximate. I tally, every 5 to 10 years. The strongest ever recorded quake in this area measured magnitude 7.9. Magnitude 7.9, that is the upper boundary of what this specific section of the New Hebrides Arc has produced in recorded history. And it will produce earthquakes of that size again. Not today, not necessarily tomorrow, but the geological reality is that this fault system is fully capable of a near magnitude 8 event. And the only question is when. Now I want to take you back to something that happened less than 2 years ago, because it is the most important piece of context for understanding why Vanuatu's seismic situation demands attention right now. December 17th, the disaster affected approximately 80,000 people, resulting in casualties, injuries, and widespread displacement. Entire communities were disrupted, and infrastructure, particularly residential buildings, suffered considerable damage. There were 14 confirmed deaths and 200 people injured, though these numbing. Errors were expected to rise as search and rescue teams continued. Major damage to infrastructure and bridges was reported, and there was a high likelihood of casualties trapped under collapsed buildings in Port Vila. Access to the main port in Port Vila had been compromised due to severe landslides. The main referral hospital, Vila Central Hospital, reported structural damage, and the operating theater was non-functional. Read that again. The main hospital, non-functional, during an earthquake emergency. The very place where injured people needed to go for emergency surgery was itself damaged by the earthquake. The operating theater was not working. People were being treated in triage tents set up in the parking lot outside a broken hospital. That is what magnitude 7.3 at 54-kilometer depth did to the capital of Vanuatu less than 2 years ago. Total damage reached $231.7 million US. Maximum intensity reached level 9, classified as violent on the modified Mercalli scale. Over 300 aftershocks were recorded with the Estros, and just measuring magnitude 6.1 on December 22nd. $231 million for a nation with a total GDP of roughly $1 billion. That is an almost incomprehensible economic blow. Nearly 1/4 of the entire country's annual economic output destroyed in 30 seconds of shaking. What made this quake especially terrifying was the duration and intensity of shaking, which lasted nearly 40 seconds in some areas. Residents described hearing a loud rumble before everything started moving violently. Many people were caught indoors and had little time to react. 40 seconds? Count to 40 right now. W, count slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Think about what it would feel like if the floor beneath your feet, the walls around you, the ceiling above you were violently moving the entire time. 40 seconds of violent earthquake shaking. That is what the people of Port Vila experienced on December 17th, 2024. And now we are in August of 2026, less than 2 years later, and the earth beneath Vanuatu is shaking again, a 6.1, deep this time. No immediate casualties expected, green pager alert, but the same system, the same plates, the same subduction zone that produced the 2024 disaster, the 1973 magnitude 7.5, the 1974 magnitude 7.2, the magnitude 7.9, that remains the strongest ever recorded in this area. Now, there is something incredibly important I need to explain about the difference between today's deep earthquake and a shallow one, because this is the core of the geological story, and most people never understand it properly. Today's earthquake, at 188-kilometer depth, is happening inside the subducting slab itself. The Australian plate, as it dives down beneath the Pacific plate, does not just slide smoothly into the mantle. It is cold and stiff compared to the hot surrounding man. Teal rock, and it experiences internal stresses as it bends and deforms during the subduction process. Those stresses build up and release as earthquakes within the slab itself, producing what geologists call intraslab earthquakes. These are deep, often strong events that produce widespread but moderate shaking at the surface. The dangerous earthquakes, the ones that kill people and destroy cities, are the ones that happen at shallow depth on the plate interface, the actual contact surface between the Australian plate and the Pacific plate, or on crustal faults within the overriding plate. When the interface ruptures at 10, 20, or 50-kilometer depth, the energy is right there, right beneath the populated land, concentrated and focused. That is what killed people in 2024. That is what produces the worst destruction. And here is the thing that makes Vanuatu uniquely dangerous compared to even other highly seismic nations. The population in this region resides in structures that are highly vulnerable to earthquake shaking, though some resistant structi, yours exist. Most buildings in Vanuatu are constructed with lumber, wood construction. In a nation that experiences magnitude 7 earthquakes nearly every year, while wood can actually perform reasonably well in earthquakes if properly built, the informal and unengineered construction that characterizes most buildings in a small developing Pacific Island nation is a completely different story. When earthquake shaking hits structures that were not designed with seismic resistance in mind, the results can be devastating regardless of the building material. That was literally put out of action by the last major earthquake, and a building stock that is largely vulnerable to strong shaking. And today, on August 16th, 2026, the Australian plate moved again beneath those islands, 6.1 deep. No disaster this time, but the same machine that is always running, always building stress, always loading the fault system with energy that will eventually, inevitably be released. Think about the geography here for a moment. Vanuatu is a chain of islands stretching about 1,200 kilometers from north to south across the South Pacific. Port Olry, where today's earthquake was centered, is on Espiritu Santo in the northern part of the chain. Port Vila, which was devastated in 2024, is on Efate in the central part of the chain. The entire island chain sits within the seismic zone, generated by the New Hebrides subduction system. There is no part of Vanuatu that is safe from earthquakes. There is no island that sits outside the danger zone. Every community, from the smallest remote village to the capital city itself, is living above this relentlessly active fault system. And Vanuatu is not just dealing with earthquakes. It is also one of the most volcanically active countries on Earth, with multiple active volcanoes, including Mount Yasur on Tanna Island, which has been continuously erupting for centuries and is considered one of the MRs now. Let's come back to today's specific event and what it tells us about the current state of the seismic system beneath northern Vanuatu. The 6.1 at 188 km depth near Port Olry is the Earth releasing stress deep within the slab. In the Kanto, X of Vanuatu's constantly churning seismicity, this is not an unusual event. This region regularly produces earthquakes of this magnitude at these depths, but it is happening in the wake of a very active seismic period for the entire southwestern Pacific. The same day this earthquake happened, Indonesia was being torn apart by a magnitude 7.7 near Flores Island and a magnitude 6.9 near Pematang Siantar in Sumatra. The entire Pacific Ring of Fire was having a seismically intense 24 hours. Are these events connected? Could the massive 7.7 in Indonesia have somehow triggered the 6.1 in Vanuatu? The honest scientific answer is that direct triggering across such vast distances, thousands of kilometers, is generally considered very unlikely for events of these magnitudes. These are separate plate boundary systems operating independently. But what today demonstrates, with Flores, Pematang, and Port Olry all registering major earthquakes on the same calendar day, is a reminder of something that would always be in the back of our minds. The Pacific Ring of Fire is not a collection of isolated geological features. It is an interconnected system of plate boundaries wrapping around the entire Pacific Ocean, and any given day can see multiple major events at different points along that system. For the people of Vanuatu, right now, the immediate message from today's 6.1 is that the Earth continues to move beneath them, as it always does, as it always will. Today's deep event was not dangerous, but it serves as a reminder of what is always possible in this part of the world. The same reminder that came in December 2024, just in a much more brutal and tragic form. The 1999 Espiritu Santo earthquake, magnitude 7.5, north of Espiritu Santo Island, generated a destructive tsunami that struck Pentecost Island. Multiple magnitude 7+ events struck in 2009, 2011, 2013, 2016, and subsequent years. This pattern is not going to stop. The plates are no T going to slow down. The subduction is not going to pause to give Vanuatu time to rebuild and prepare. The geological machine running beneath these islands has been operating for millions of years and will continue to operate for millions more. The question for Vanuatu is not whether the next major shallow earthquake will come. The question is how much better prepared the country will be when it does. After the 2024 Port Vila earthquake, the international community responded with significant support. Australia One provided $28 million in practical humanitarian assistance and recovery support to Vanuatu following the December 17th earthquake. Reconstruction efforts are ongoing, buildings are being assessed and repaired, infrastructure is being rebuilt, but rebuilding takes years, and the earthquakes do not wait for rebuilding to finish before arriving. Today's 6.1 is, in one sense, the Earth being relatively kind. It released its energy from 188 km below, deep enough for the surface effects to remain moderate, deep enough for the shake map to show only level 4 intensity, deep enough for the USGS to issue its green pager alert and calculate a low likelihood of casualties. The people of northern Vanuatu, near Port Olry on Espiritu Santo, felt this earthquake but were not harmed by it. But every earthquake that happens in Vanuatu, whether it causes damage or not, is a reminder that this island nation is living on top of one of the most active subduction zones on the planet. Every deep earthquake is a cousin of the shallow ones that kill people. Every 6.1 exists in a geological neighborhood that also contains 7.5s, 7.9s, and the potential for even larger events. Today's earthquake did not cause a disaster, but it reminded us, as these events always do, that the line between a deep earthquake and a shallow one, between a green pager alert and a national emergency, between feeling a shake and losing your home or your life is a line drawn by geology, not by choice. And in Vanuatu, that line is always thin. We will keep watching the data from this region. We will keep tracking the seismic activity along the new Hebrides Arc. And if anything changes, if the aftershocks begin to migrate towards shallower depths, if a larger event follows this one, you will hear about it here first. If this video gave you something real, hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Subscribe so you never miss an update on what is happening around the Pacific Rai of fire. Share this with someone who has never heard of Vanuatu and has no idea what these people live with every single day. And leave a comment. I want to know where you're watching from and whether you've ever experienced an earthquake yourself. The comment section is open.